That's how you build power. I'm not telling you disregard the national stuff that matters. But as Jordan Peterson says in his book, clean up your own room first before you go changing the world. I want you to read this in the show notes. I want you to print this, as a matter of fact. Seriously. Print it, staple it to every single Tea Party, conservative, and libertarian group in your neighborhood's front door. How the right can organize like the left by David Hines. Ooh, this is a doozy. So in this piece, The American Conservative, they go through it. Let's go through lesson number 1. The left learned a long time ago, ladies and gentlemen, that if they were going to inflict political, cultural damage on us as conservatives, that they have to inflict material losses. The left makes things painful for us. Really painful. They try. Boycotts, secondary boycotts. So one of the points the author makes in this piece is, maybe we should learn to inflict material losses on the left. I'm just throwing the idea out there. Let's go to the piece here. And he says this. It's a little long, but man, is this worth your time? The Republicans had the House, the Senate, and the presidency for 2 years. And they didn't consider repealing that law. They're talking about a law that makes it illegal to block access to an abortion clinic, or amending it to give public buildings and thoroughfares the same protection as abortion clinics, effectively shutting down many leftist shenanigans. Keep that up a second, Paul. But in other words, saying, well, that's, weird. You're not allowed to, block access to an abortion clinic, but you're allowed to block access to just about everywhere else. So the author's like, that sounds kind of strange, doesn't it? The Republicans didn't even defund Planned Parenthood. By contrast, Democrats aren't even back in power yet, and they're already making noises about repealing Taft-Hartley and allowing unions to use secondary boycotts. That's when activist groups like Sleeping Giants do when they target companies that advertise on places like Breitbart. Left, listen, this is this takeaway. Golden rule number 1 for the leftists you should pay close attention to. Leftists know that if your enemy has a successful tactic, make it illegal or impractical. If your friends are hampered by legislation, change it to empower them. That Planned Parenthood example is key in that. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to really impact change, sometimes voting just isn't enough. When we vote, we need to pressure the politicians on our side to inflict material losses on the left, like the left has done to us. They want to boycott? Maybe we should boycott too. I was against that years ago and spoke out against it. I hate boycotts. I think they're ridiculous and absurd. But if they want to do it, then maybe we should do it too. And maybe there'll be a moment when both sides sit down and say, this really isn't working because we're both getting crushed right now financially. Why are we funding Planned Parenthood? Why are we funding an organization terminating life in the womb? Why are we doing that? Why isn't Planned Parenthood suffering material losses from taxpayers? Why? Why are they still being paid? Fascinating point. Inflict material losses. That's what the left's been doing to us forever. Second point. To donors out there. Stop funding all this national stuff all the time. It's great, but your money's better used locally. This is a terrific, terrific point. Quote, if you're a donor to one politician or many, don't put quite so much funding into TV commercials for national politicians. Instead, put money into building infrastructure where you live with your local party and local activists. Your money can provide cost-effective on-ramps for solid new candidates to get their foot in the door. And when it comes to activism, forget about giving tons of money to big national groups. Give modest amounts to a few local groups and tell your fellow donors to do the same. Remarkably, small amounts of cash can support an activist culture that not only feeds the party, but creates stronger conditions on the ground, not with attention-getting stunts, but with careful, thoughtful work. Yes. 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 Folks, Michael Bloomberg, now far leftist lunatic, he wasn't always that way, spent $100 million to get Biden elected in Florida. Biden lost in Florida by a historic amount. Paula, how often were the TV commercials for Biden running down here? I live in Florida. Not only every commercial break, multiple times within the commercial break, and Biden lost by what could be close to 4 points when it's said and done. National money and TV ads, ladies and gentlemen. You got to get on TV. You have to be on TV, but are largely wasted. Nobody's voting according to a TV commercial. I'm really sorry. Spend that money locally. Let me give you an example of what I mean. I lived in Maryland. Joe's there now, right now. Maryland's a far, far left state. President Trump lost there by close to 30 points. Far left. It's been largely lost to conservatives for a long time. I ran in Maryland twice. There was a group there that fought back against a rain tax. It was a tax on impervious surfaces. How it worked was complicated. I'll leave it for another day, but Joe remembers it well. The rain tax. It made people furious. If you had a flat roof in a warehouse, you got a tax bill for something like 20, 30 grand. Yeah. People, Democrats, Republicans were furious. So furious that a Republican governor not only won in Maryland, I'm not a huge fan of this guy, but to be fair, won in Maryland, but won re-election by a landslide. I'm telling you, that started with the rain tax and a local issue where local activists went out there, sat there on the corners waving signs, started local Facebook groups, started going into the state assembly and having their voices heard at open hearings. Started talking to the press and figuring out how to use the press. Started staging events. It led to a revolt in Maryland that led to some real change over there. Now, the Republican governor of Maryland, even though he's dominated by leftists in the state assembly and state delegates and state senate, he is going to be ultimately in charge of the redistricting effort in Maryland, where I can almost guarantee you Maryland, that has 7 Democrats and 1 Republican in the United States Congress, I can almost guarantee you that once the redistricting in Maryland happens, that there's going to be at least 1 more Republican seat in Maryland, possibly 2. How does that affect you? Because, ladies and gentlemen, what if there's some vote comes down on something like Obamacare, again, with Biden, where it was literally down to 1, 2, or 3 votes on either side at any given point? What if that vote is the seat that comes up in Maryland, all because of the rain tax and the Republican governor that got in there? Play the short game, play the long game, but play the game exactly like they play it. So lesson number 1, material losses matter. Lesson number 2, local money matters a whole lot more than national money. Let's go to lesson 3. Build power locally too. From the piece. If you're a grassroots voter, your first job is go look for a group today. Don't imagine exactly what you want in your head and go looking for that, expecting to find it to the letter. You're not. That only works in romance novels. Find a group, meet people, and build out of it. If you're an activist, you have 2 jobs now. Grow your group locally and make connections with other local groups. Forget about big national stuff. Build power where you are, first and foremost. Triple amen. Let me give you an example again. First example was material losses. I give you the example of Planned Parenthood. Why are they getting our money? Second example, the rain tax example in Maryland that led to systemic change. Let me give you a third example about building power locally. We have a group down here, Club 45. It's a pro-Trump group in Palm Beach County. All they do is activism. They register voters locally. They have meetings where they have speakers come in, teaching them how to be activists. They're out there waving signs on the corner. I have no doubt that President Trump's exceptional performance in Palm Beach County, where they are, exceptional performance is largely attributed to this local group that fought on the ground there locally, fights for local issues, and they have meetings with thousands of people at them. I did a book signing there before the plague. I've never seen a crowd like that. We ran out of books. Organize locally. Meet with other groups. Don't look for the perfect group out there. Oh, I'm about the fair tax. Me too. I love the fair tax. There's a bunch of fair tax supporter groups. Get with another group. Maybe they don't support the fair tax. Maybe they support a flat tax, but you have a lot in common. You know what you have in common? Economic liberty. That's how you build power. I'm not telling you disregard the national stuff that matters. But as Jordan Peterson says in his book, clean up your own room first before you go changing the world.
You just heard Dan Bongino.